here again. I am delighted to do another episode. In fact, a friend of mine said, "Hey, better do another one next week." And so now this is the day of that week that I'm bringing in a friend of mine who is. I learn a lot every time we go live because this is part of the thing that the business is moving so quickly that it is rather difficult to keep up, and definitely I am not able to keep up without help from my friends, as they say in the good old song. So let me bring in my friend Jayanth Kolla. See, we have Jayanth Kolla. See, we got him online here. This moment, I think we can. Here we go. Yeah, Jayanth.
Yeah.
How are you?
Hi, Sam-Erik. Doing good. How are you?
Excellent, excellent. I'm so glad to connect with you again. And
Likewise.
for those who don't know you, Jayanth Kolla is a founder of. I thought it was only one company. You have two companies now. I'm amazing. Convergence Catalyst, and you've been with your partner advising companies and helping them to set up some strategies to keep up with the pace of the fast-pacing emerging technologies, and also looking at their product lines. So that's the kind of thing, if I'm understanding correct. Did I catch the essence of what you're doing for that company?
Yes. So as a part of Convergence Catalyst, I help companies figure out their product and business strategies using deep technologies. And right now in the COVID world, help them figure out their post-COVID strategy and their business models.
Okay, well, that's very good. Now, then you have another company out of Toronto, or is it Canada?
Toronto, Sensei Technologies. Yes, we are trying to build a deep technologies, converge deep technology platform. Building a whole bunch of deep technology-based products that could be used across industries, starting off with sports tech and research and consulting automation.
Oh, very good. What I understand is that now you have, during the COVID period, you have started to look at what's going on in the market, and also analyzing certain trends, not only specifically giving advice to companies, but you're also looking at things, what's going on in the travel and hospitality. And I think that's the topic we would talk about. And so what do you see now in what's going on in the market at the moment, and what are your views on the different issues, let's say marketing related and so on?
So there's some disturbance. There's a lot of noise. Okay, now it's better. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, very well.
Okay, so when it comes to travel and tourism industry, even before that, right, with COVID-19 and the lockdown in the last couple of months, and we are seeing the first phase of lockdowns lifting from around the world. China was the first country where the lockdowns lifted in early April, and then we have some early consumer spending data coming out of China, and also we can compare it with Sweden. I mean, Sweden was one country which never had lockdown. So just last weekend there was the first consumer spending data that came out of China. 2 months after the lockdown was up. The economic activity was up by 90%, right, in China. What that means is the consumer, wherever consumer spends, retail outlets, malls, restaurants, 90% of them were open and operational. But the footfalls in malls were down by 50%. Okay, as compared to the pre-COVID time or the pre-lockdown phase in China, and these are footfalls, not even spending, mind you. And air tickets, flight bookings were down by 50%. Flight bookings were down by 75%, and the hotel bookings were down by 50%. So this is China numbers. If you compare that to Sweden in terms of what's happening in Sweden, a country where there was no lockdown, the government did not ask its citizens to stay indoors. Yet in the month of April, the spending in restaurants and cafes was down by 70%. Almost as close to Hungary, where it was a strict lockdown. So what's happening is essentially, regardless of what the governments are asking consumers to do, whether to stay indoors or not, the consumer spending definitely, thanks to COVID-19, has come down, and people are spending on essentials and not as much on discretionary. And I later in the discussion I'll talk about how we are seeing even the spending that's being done by consumers is being done for certain establishments, and some of the conventional establishments and big chains are being missed out. So we'll talk about that a little later.
Yeah, I think from what I have from my research and the information, I'm getting similar feel, and also just thinking from the human nature. You've been in a lockdown for a period of 6 weeks, 8 weeks, or whatnot. There's some sort of a pressure. You want to do something, but you still worry about. Well, is it safe to go there? If I'm close to somebody else, can I catch something? And they say, well, the mask doesn't help, but I should wear a mask, and so I wear the mask. And when I'm outdoors, maybe I don't wear a mask, but I just avoid walking close to people. And if I'm living in an environment, an urban environment, which is a huge population, where it's quite normal that it's crowds, I'm a little bit worried about these things. And that's the same thing we are experiencing here. And as you rightly said, there are government and cities that are trying to motivate their citizens to spend more. An example is like Vienna, Austria. Vienna, the city is giving out for the citizens of Vienna a €50 certificate they can spend in their favorite cafes and restaurants. It's just as a part of a payment.
Interesting.
Yeah, and then now Helsinki is very different. I was walking out yesterday, and we just opened up the bars and restaurant on Monday, and Monday was rather quiet. Yesterday, again, because there's more seating outdoors and indoors, you're allowed to only fill the half of the capacity. So outdoor terraces were very, very busy yesterday.
Okay.
And as a result, I got the impression that typically a human brain we have a little bit of a short memory, and we like to go to the comfort we are used to. And in Helsinki, definitely the places that I visited on the center, they were fully occupied. And thirdly, which is even more interesting, considering the unrest that has been going on, and that's not really the topic of today. There was Wednesday was a demonstration around the world, and Helsinki, at the center of Helsinki, gathered maybe it was about 5,000 people, and to express their sympathy and opinion about the Black Lives Matter issue. And so, but then they dispersed very quickly. But it just shows that on one side there's a worry on personal level, but then on the other side they're prepared to be brave and take the extra step. The challenge now, of course, is then the people who are now in the baby boomer and in the 70s. They will stay away from things, and they still go to shopping, for food shopping, early in the morning, because that's a time when it's reserved for them. But in generally, I have a feeling that there are certain things that will be what we call has it been before, because of the comfortable. People start to get comfortable again about the life as usual, at least in certain part of the world.
Yeah, true. It's actually a conundrum, isn't it? I mean, as a human, we are a social being. We are used to step out.
Yeah.
And if you look at what happened in Seoul in mid-May, as soon as the lockdown lifted and the bars and the nightclubs were open, there was one guy who walked into a nightclub. He didn't know he was positive, and about 40 other people got infected because of him. And 1,900 people had to be tested. And the next day, the mayor asked for the closure of 2,100 bars and nightclubs in Seoul, right?
Yes.
So it's a conundrum. I mean, we are social beings. We will go out. So hopefully, in the short or immediate to short term, we will be careful. And once this time and of the coronavirus passes out, we will definitely go out. But yes, certain things, our behavior would have definitely changed, and that's what will have an impact on the travel and tourism industry and the hospitality industry. Because that industry, we can talk about on a long term. There
Yes.
are going to be some long term, not usage, behavioral changes. Okay, that would definitely we need to be factored in for that industry.
Yeah, and I think also that you coined this word called bubble travel, which has become very very popular, and then also I started to see this word being used in
Yeah.
from Singapore. There's a James.
James Crabtree. Yeah.
James Crabtree used that, and it just describes with a cartoon that that bubble, how people will be traveling in the areas where they
Yes.
feel safe and comfortable to travel.
True, true. Yeah, we discussed about bubble travel on our episode, previous episode last week. Uh, you know, uh, Really, it caught up, and looks like that's going to be the new normal, at least for the foreseeable future, for the next 3 to 4 years. And, if we have to talk about, the exploration nature of human being and the social nature of human being, right? I mean, if we have to look a little back into into the history, even explorers like Christopher Columbus, right? Christopher Columbus, built this new ship, and back then the ship technology was what was, driving. Ship technology was the artificial intelligence and blockchain of that era,
Yes.
right? So he built a new ship, and he wanted to go discover India, and he needed investors. He went and approached the king of Portugal and various other European countries. Finally, the Spanish king backed him with the money, and he got on the ship and went ahead and lost his way and discovered America,
Yeah.
right? So, but that nature of exploring, that nature of traveling, has always been inside us as humans, and it's going to continue. And 2 years from now, as things start coming back to normal, and people will want to keep traveling more and more. And we see this especially in the younger generation, in the millennials and Gen Z, and the older millennials, where their willingness, their want to travel is that much more. And that is where I was telling you yesterday that there is an opportunity for the retail banking and the financial services industry to essentially uh, leverage on this on this behavior of the younger generation, right?
That's very interesting. When you mentioned that you want to bring in the financial and the banking into this discussion, I said, well, I don't know if I have any good experience with banks, but I have some, of course. But it's always the question of they're fast of doing things and they respond to what you need and so on. But
Right.
I really like to understand exactly the angle you want to bring this discussion on, so we can
So
have. I think.
yeah, what I have in mind is travel loans, right?
Oh,
So,
okay.
yeah, if you look at it, if let's say capitalism in some form or the other continues to exist post COVID, 2 years from now, banks, I see banks, productizing travel loans. And if you look at it, the previous generation, credit cards, I mean, they when consumerism was at its peak, okay, mindless consumerism, credit cards became tools for people to buy a lot of stuff, that they needed or did not need, and banks enabled that. And the subprime crisis was essentially the banks enabling people's innate need to own houses, right, at very cheap rates. And then in the last 10 years, after 2008, 2010, the subprime crisis fall, the next big thing, especially in the Western markets, was student loans, right? All of a sudden, university education had become costly, and everyone who needed a degree to get themselves a job had to get themselves, a loan, and that way, they were indebted to the bank. So, I see, and right now, the need to travel, especially among the younger generation, is that much more because they don't believe in, owning houses or cars anymore. Okay, and especially after this COVID lockdown, refrained to their homes and houses for such a long time. They're that generation also believes in going out and meeting people and making multiple friends, right? So exploration is what they spend their money on. I mean, that's a YOLO generation. You only live once, okay? And they believe in experiential living, and travel is the way. So now I actually see either banks or someone in the hospitality industry needs to tie in the entire value chain, okay, and productize travel loans, right? So I see that as a potential opportunity, and someone in the banking or the financial services sector might crack it because now we have credit rating based on algorithms, okay, depending on your demographics, psychographics, your Facebook behavior, and your retail purchase behavior. Algorithms will give you a credit rating, and banks can dish out loans today. If anyone wants to take out a travel loan, the only financial instrument available to them is either a credit card loan or a personal loan, and depending on which part of the world you're living at, it rates between anywhere between 17 to 30%.
Yeah.
Right? So I foresee travel loans as becoming the next big financial instrument, and thereby, banking sector coming and giving that, requisite push to the hospitality and the travel and tourism industry. They will, in a way, tie up the, value chain more tightly and crisply and end-to-end, and offer, end-to-end experiential products backed by financial instruments.
So just to understand the travel loan concept is that so obviously it's not the credit card related, it's not your personal loan, but so let's say if I want to plan my trips for next year or 2 years, and I like to take a travel loan to pay for all that. How is it still a personal loan?
Currently it is still a personal loan,
Yeah.
or you can take a loan on your credit card.
Yeah.
The problem with that is the interest that it attracts are fairly high, right?
Yeah.
It's anywhere between 17 to 35, 36% depending on different parts of the world.
Yeah.
Right? That's extremely high. What I imagine is, the bankers and the financiers coming in, providing this at a fairly attractive and lucrative rates,
Okay.
thereby making it extremely attractive for people to take those loans. And then at the back end, they have multiple instruments. They'll chop these and convert them into bonds and ETFs and derivatives, and have multiple products that they can trade on the stock markets. I mean, we've seen that happen. We've seen them do it with the subprime crisis. We've seen them doing it with the student loan crisis in the last 10 years. Okay, so they're extremely great at doing that. So you offer the banks, the capitalistic banks, a reason to get the population indebted. They'll take it, and I believe travel is a very ripe sector for coming out of the COVID crisis 2 years from now, for them to jump on it.
So then, in one way, this could have mean that if I plan my travel and I want to kind of secure the funding for my travels, it could be tied up with the bank for the travel loan, but they also tied up to a particular airline, and also could be tied up with a particular hotel chain. So let's say I'm making my sabbatical, but I'm a digital nomad, and I'm going to where I'm working is anywhere I live at the moment. So I could be 1 month in Bali and then another month in Lombok.
Absolutely.
Well, you don't need a plane for Lombok, but then if I will continue to Japan or to Korea or Philippines or China, this could be tied into an entire scheme. Then is that am I on the right track here?
You're absolutely on the right track. So someone's going to connect these dots. I mean, it's either someone going to be from the travel and tourism industry or the hospitality industry, or someone from the banks.
Yeah.
From a bank's perspective, it's essentially the same. Back in the day, people used to wait till they retire and get out their 401k money and their pension money to finally buy a house. Then, the last generation, banks enabled people in their mid-20s to buy houses. Their entire point was, why wait till the end of your life or end of your productive life to buy a house? Do it now. Now, overlay that to the travel and exploration mindset of people, right? People wait till they retire to go see the world, to have their favorite cruises, so that they can afford their favorite cruises and everything. Now, the banks or anyone who's cracked this can come and say, why wait till you're 60 or 65 once you retire? Do that in your 30s, when you can do it and when you have the energy to go see the world. So and here's here's the money, you go do it, and you can pay me out later in installments.
Yeah.
You're anyway not owning houses. You've inherited your houses from your parents. So yeah, go see the world.
Very good.
Innate nature.
Very good. That's a very interesting thought. Just as a reminder now for all the viewers, and if you still wonder what is this bubble travel about, if you look up here and you're watching it on YouTube as a replay, there will be a sort of end card to this at this point, and you just click that picture, and then you will land at the video we talked about. So just to clarify how we can help you to reach that video eventually. If you don't want to see it now, you can see it at the end of our show. It's going to be also visible there. Very good. Okay, now I understand. Now I'm a little bit smarter in how you're thinking about this. That's very, very exciting. Anything else you want to add on the financial sector, or shall we move on to the next topic?
That's about it. I mean, my only point is, anyone in the travel, tourism, and the hospitality sector can take this idea and tie up all the players and launch this product, or the banks will do it in due course, for sure.
Okay, I'm going to ask now the viewers. Could you give a thumbs up if you believe this is a viable that travel loans is a way in the future? So give a thumbs up, or if you disagree, which is quite okay, that gives us an opportunity to discuss. Just put in your comments into the chat. This is for all the viewers: LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, wherever you're watching this from. So we like to hopefully you can help us to contribute to this discussion, because I think this is actually a very interesting idea, and because this will be a recorded video, so whenever somebody cracks this product, then we can say, well, hey, remember us? Yeah. So let's talk about marketing a little bit, and you mentioned that maybe we should talk a little bit about a little bit to get the hotel companies and hotels, hospitality companies, a little bit more on up to date in how they are reaching out their customers and creating loyalty and creating sort of personal experiences. And I mean, in the past episodes, I've been talking about the importance of social media to reach out. And to prove the point is that once we got everything stopped and people were not busy anymore, they were working from home, so they have time. They spend a lot of time on social media, but also they spend a lot of time on YouTube. And the smart companies who advertise, they went to advertise into those social media to reach new customers at the same time. And also that I can hear you tapping a bit.
Sure.
Yeah. So then the issue was that also I was looking at how hotels are approaching the social media, and probably the best example were restaurateurs, the chefs. They were starting to do live videos, and particularly the live videos that you could see was on Instagram, or what we call IGTV. So this episodical, a perfect example, some of the Italian chefs come out every day, and they have the camera in the kitchen and they show how to cook their favorite dish. You can also see the same thing in 6-second videos, like Vibe. It's a small, different type of a tool these days, and somebody who loves cooking, in 6 seconds they show how to make linguine aglio olio pepperoncino or something like that along those lines, and so that kind of works very well out. So but I still see that the hotels are catching up on this. But I think the things that they should take another look at is what are the expectations for businesses and customers. That there's one company that made a research, and they say that 96% of businesses say a fast response is important to the query.
Right.
And 82% of the customers says businesses are not fast enough. So smart business organization can close the gap if they're really smart, and attract more customers and steal market share, if you will, if they're really smart about it. So what's the tool for that? Well, the tool is available, and because everybody's on WhatsApp, SMS, and so on, so there is interaction management platforms, which means is that you have even you have a web chat or somebody will contact you or from your website, this immediately ends up into a messaging tool where you are responding not from the website but actually from a messaging tool. And if you are contacting from Facebook or you're contacting from, let's say, Instagram messages or Facebook messages or from YouTube chat, it's ends up into the same platform or mailbox, so you can see in real time all your questions coming in for the hotel or travel company, and you can respond immediately to that. Because then there are very few hotels, and I don't know any hotel who's actually doing that at the moment, because this is something this is a tool that I think they could create a tremendous advantage, because there's the opportunity of using messaging or using bots, for instance, where you're getting automated messages. You load in 4,000 typical questions, and you give the 4,000 answers, so you get instant response to your query. And this is the single strongest opportunity for hotel company and travel companies to make a huge difference in their competition to the next door by doing that. And also that you can divide that also to a payment system. So you can in this let's say in WhatsApp you communicated, the customer confirmed the visit to Bali, for instance, then they confirm the order, and then you can have the payment. So it really is very few short steps how you can close the sale and receive payment for the service that you offered. So and then it gives another opportunity for immediately after you have done that, there's a message to leave a review, and if you're satisfied with the service that you just got, you can make like a 1 sentence, 2 sentence comment and click on the stars, and this also will go back to the original platform where you originally wrote from. Let's say you wrote it from TripAdvisor, so that review of that service is ended up on TripAdvisor. So is that cool or what?
Oh, absolutely. I did not know about this particular tool. Very glad to hear that it already exists for the hospitality industry. Sort of sad that it's not as widely adopted as it should be. Whoever has developed this, looks like they put a lot of thought into it in terms of it's an aggregator platform for reviews and ratings, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and obviously the more popular one is TripAdvisor. Okay, but if you develop an aggregator platform where the hotel can instantly communicate and engage with the guest, and whatever review has been put in, it gets published on the popular review sites like the OTAs and the TripAdvisors. Nothing like it. I mean, this sounds like a good tool that hotels should adopt and start using it to engage with the consumers, with their guests, right?
Yeah.
But I completely agree with you. And if I have to, provide what we've been observing, what people in the travel and tourism industry, hospitality industry are using or not yet using, various marketing tools available to them. Even before that, let me just give you some information or some trends that we're observing during the COVID-19 phase, right? So the consumer behavior, apart from spending on essentials, whatever, let's say the next thing that they're spending on are non-essentials, right? Even the spending behavior has sort of changed. I mean, let me give you a little historical trivia here. So, do you know who's invented the consumer propaganda or the consumerism? Do you have any idea?
Tell me.
There's this gentleman called Edward Bernays, okay, in mid 1920s, okay, he invented consumerism and consumer propaganda, okay, and it's very interesting because he happens to be the nephew of Sigmund Freud, okay. So what Edward realized is that his uncle's psychotherapy could be turned into a very lucrative retail therapy if we could be convinced to believe that we transform ourselves every time we buy something more, right? So this was the basic fundamental you know fundamental tenet on which the current consumerism consumerism has been built on, okay. This was and this principle and this mindset is almost 100 years old, okay. But what we are observing in the during the COVID lockdown phases, the current generation, people currently are that much more aware and conscious, right? I mean, the entire world is a single village right now, thanks to internet and thanks to how fast the information spreads, and everybody is thinking at a humane level. They all know that everybody is in the same boat, and people are losing jobs, and people small business owners need to make money. So what I have been observing, and I've checked with a few friends both in India and around the world, and the trend seems to be the same. If you look at restaurants or hotels, people are ordering in food from home cooks, not as much as the hotel chains, even though the restaurants and the big hotel chains have closed down and were offering takeaways from their kitchens. People instead have been ordering from home cooks or the cooks of these restaurants and hotels who have been laid off and who are working from home. They are getting more orders on WhatsApp groups, on Facebook groups, on Instagrams, okay. And there is what I would want to call it, something called as conscious consumerism that's evolving, right? People are still consuming non-essential goods and services, but they're consuming it consciously. They want to help the other person, other business, okay, not as much a big chain or a retail, or a brand just for the heck of it, or a huge company. Now, how this extends to the tourism and the hospitality industry is that there's actually a good news for, let's say, a family-owned resort, or one or two resorts that are owned by individuals or a small group of friends or family, which offer specific experiences. If people are traveling, and willing to travel more than the Hyatts, Hiltons, and the Marriotts, they would want to give business to these establishments. Yeah. Okay, there's a sense of giving business to people who need it, instead of the big chains, which especially the hospitality industry, they have the human connect, but they're still an establishment, right? I mean, it's seen as a big establishment and a big brand. Okay, so that is the insight. But now the problem is also that some of these resorts, hotels, they don't interact, they don't engage with their guests as much as they should, and they do not take advantage of all the tools, the digital marketing tools, the social media marketing tools, the data that is available out there to reach out and engage with their potential guests and consumers as much. A lot of hotels and resorts that I know don't even have Instagram accounts or Facebook accounts. Okay, they are 100% dependent on the tour operators to provide them the guests, and we discussed this for a little bit in the previous episode. The engagement with the guest happens once they land at the hotel, and does not evolve beyond the guest leaves. So that I think is where there's a lot of opportunity, and you mentioned some tools. I would like to extend that to even content marketing. So creating content, and that content could be textual form blogs. Okay, tell your story. I mean, people want to connect with your story, right? Hilton's, Marriott's, and and the Hyatts are putting out 5-minute videos of how they are sanitizing every bit of their hotel. Guess what? If I live, and I've lived in enough Hiltons and Marriotts, that is expected, out of a Hilton and a Marriott. I mean, sanitizing every part of your of your hotel and ensuring that I don't contract the virus is hygiene. It's like saying that if you're hungry at midnight, we'll provide you food. Of course, it's expected out of a Hilton, right? But these boutique hotels and smaller family-owned businesses, they need to right now reach out, tell their story. Okay, there are a lot of travel bloggers out there, influencers out there. Engage them, use their and their outreach, to reach out to the potential consumers and guests, and tell the story. So there's content marketing, there's vlogs, there's podcasts that that they can do, there's blogs, and a whole lot of stuff. And I think, and what people have is time at their hand. I mean, from now to, let's say, another year and a half, till the entire traffic takes off to the pre-COVID level, they have enough time to build a story, not spending as much money. Okay, invest in time and invest in telling your story and attracting people from, instead of them going to the Hiltons and the Marriotts, to your resorts.
Yeah.
So
That's a good there's a good example, exactly what you're talking about. I had in one of our shows, we had a resort in Malaysia, in Langkawi. And before I went live with them, as I always do, I went to look at how are they presenting themselves in social media. And they went to, on IGTV, they have several videos about because the Thai, I have to give a shout out to the Thai Langkawi Hotel Resort, and go to Instagram and check out their Instagram account and the videos that talk about the tourists and all the activities they do, because they're in the middle of the jungle, and they're providing for some very exciting things to do. And they are the good example of a standalone resort that's been around for ages, and they of course have a lot of returning guests, but they are, more importantly, they are taking advantage of the iPhone. They go out and pre-record the video, so it's not even a live thing. They just pre-record, and nicely produced, and it's in-house. They don't have a production company doing this for this in-house. So you have one of the staff who is sort of the presenter, and then there's somebody else behind the iPhone, and they're doing some fantastic work. So if there's any one takeaway about this that you take when you're watching this, go and take a look at some of the hotels' Instagram accounts and see the difference of when it's done excellently, and then benchmark that to the Thai Langkawi. That's a very good example. So I mean, I'm not sponsored by them, and I probably will never. Maybe the GM will give me a drink when I get there one of these days, but it is because I like what they're doing, so I want to pass on this tip. Now, meanwhile, I'm on here. If you like what we are talking about, and please subscribe on YouTube. Just press that button, and also press the notification bell, and you'll get informed when we're going live again with new items. And if you're on LinkedIn, just if you happen to just bump into this episode, then just follow me on my personal profile, and you'll get to know then when I'm next live. And in Facebook, well, you probably are already in my page already, so we are friends over there. But in any case, if you haven't subscribed, or you haven't been notified before, here's a chance to do that, and with no strings attached. And we are not selling any products. We're not promoting anything. We don't have sponsors. We are doing with Jayanth because we are passionate about this, right?
Absolutely. We are passionate about good ideas. We're passionate about helping the industries grow and thrive, and good karma.
Good. All right. So that's about that. And anything else you want to share?
And yeah, I have probably one other idea or a tip that I would like to give to some of the hospitality players. Considering that a lot of them are opening up this summer in July 1st. Use your first set of post-COVID guests as your advocates. Okay, I'll tell you. Back in 2005, 2006, between 2005 and 2008, I used to launch a bunch of mobile phones for Motorola and Nokia, right? And Motorola back then, soon after Razr, used to design very cool-looking but wacky hardware phones. And every time we used to come out with a non-conventional but extremely cool design phone, the first 100 customers who bought that phone, we used to treat them extremely well. I mean, selling 1 million phones in a month depended completely on how well we treated or we took care of the first 100 customers who bought a new model of the mobile, right? So taking something from that, right now, after the entire lockdown, there are a bunch of as you guys are opening up, I don't know what your guest fill rate could be. It could be 10%, 15%, 25%, or hopefully 100%. But treat the first set of guests who are coming and staying with you after the lockdown. Interact with them, engage them, and use them as advocates to build the traffic over the next year or so, and tell your story.
Well, I have to give you a drum swirl here. I don't know if you hear it, but the audience will hear it. The drums went off as the great tip of the day.
Okay. Yeah, I wanted to ensure this tip.
Yeah, excellent. Well, I think we have had some very good sessions, and I don't see any comments, and I apologize in case some of these, whether Facebook or YouTube or LinkedIn comments didn't come through. But we will reply to any comments you made once we are over and live, and we go back to look at the recording to respond to you. So I think I'd like to thank Jayanth, you very much again for this. Has been a great session, and look forward to do another one sooner than later.
Yeah, sure. Look forward, Sam-Erik.
Thank you. And I'd like to thank again all the live viewers and the replay viewers who joined us. And if you're driving a car and you prefer to listen it as a podcast and in a more rather than watching it on a screen, just subscribe to the Social Hotelier podcast. You will see that in the end trailer, the links to where to reach us. So thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you next time.